Hi, everyone. We're just going to give a couple of minutes to wait for all of the attendees to join the room. All right, well, welcome everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started and let everyone else that's joining us a couple minutes late join as we get underway. I'm Tom Walker. I'm the Executive Director at Encore Outpatient Services. We are a partnership between Caron Treatment Centers and Maryland Addiction Recovery Center. You can't see them, but I'm joined by my colleagues at both organizations. Thank you for joining us today in our webinar series, DMV Neighbors in Treatment and Recovery, a spotlight on local resources, programs, and expertise. Every week, we look forward to highlighting a different provider in the DMV region to provide you with some insights and resources you can utilize in your practice to help you adapt to the changes we've all had to adjust to in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. Please note that these sessions are not eligible for continuing education credit. We will be conducting these sessions in a webinar format. All participant microphones will be muted. During the presentation, please utilize the Q&A feature to ask any questions you may have. We will have time for questions at the end of the presentation. This week's scheduled presenter, Eric Quinlan, is with us today to speak on the topic, Innovative Approaches to Academic Recovery Support During COVID-19. Eric is the Adolescent and Young Adult Transition Coach at Recovery Care Partner. His own journey includes being a teacher at a therapeutic boarding school, as well as the education director at a treatment center. He is uniquely qualified to develop individualized and comprehensive plans, not only for young adults' academics and recovery, but also for other anxiety-producing factors that a transition to sober living can create. Eric's own long-term recovery equips him with a compassionate and collaborative approach to adolescent and young adult substance abuse, mental health, and learning differences. Please welcome Eric Quinlan.
Hey, Tom. Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you to Encore, to Caron, and to Mark for having me. It's really an honor to be able to speak with you guys about my work. Transition coaching. Like Tom said, it's academic recovery support, and it exists outside of the clinical roles. So I'm a master's level educator, certified in history, English, and work with adolescents, young adults. You can change the slide, please. So a lot of people have a question because the job that I do is so amorphous that what is transition coaching? What does it really mean? For me, transition coaching is helping a young person get from one place to another, from a treatment center to a school, from treatment to home, or even before they go to treatment, if they're able to get some sort of structure and support, with hopes that they don't need to go, but if they need to go, it's a smooth transition. I provide academic recovery support, high school age students, collegiate age students. Yeah, and I've had experience working with both populations. They're both very different. Educationally very different, developmentally obviously very different. Not always though, some of the developmental delays of kids. Like I said, I do direct instruction in history and English. I like to work with the books. If kids need, academic coaching, solely academic coaching with regards to history and English, I can do that aside from the recovery piece, which is kind of a unique position that I'm in for my organization. Mentoring as well. I have a history of working with adolescents and young adults. I had worked at Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Capital Region in Albany, New York for a while. Mentored a young man for about 5 years till he was old enough to kind of fly away on his own and do his own thing and succeed. So what I do now with the mentoring is really kind of guiding and being a sounding board and being an ally, or we call it sometimes with the younger guys, they like to call me their agent that has their back when they're dealing with difficult situations and sometimes just regular life questions that they might have. Next slide, please. So, so why transition coaching? So, when students are, vulnerable, when they're leaving, treatment center, they don't know where they're going, they don't know what's going on, they need guidance. I provide that kind of bridge to fill in that white space that we talk about quite often. It's not clinical, it's not educational. It's kind of that white space where they need that extra kind of step or two to really be able to be propelled to recovery and with hopes of, long-term recovery. Another piece that is helpful for families is that, families are nervous. They're not sure of the family dynamic, how it's going to change when the young person comes back into the home. Mom and dad have a tough time with trying to manage academics, manage social life, manage 12-step. And what I can do is I can kind of come in and act as this coach or this case manager where I can, provide the accountability, provide the learning support, really, support the young person so that they don't feel like they're being helicoptered by the parents. That usually, always drives them to a negative place. And these young people in recovery, they need structure. They need face-to-face contact outside of mom and dad. And coming back from treatment, if you're 15 or 16 or 17 years old, to go into a 12-step meeting by yourself is terrifying. So what I can do is I can escort the young person to a 12-step meeting, get them connected to a young people's meeting, and get them also connected to individuals who are like-minded, who are younger, who would make good sponsors and good healthy peers for them to kind of be friends with. So academic coaching sessions. So with academic coaching sessions, time depends. It can be 30 minutes for an adolescent, a young adolescent. Some collegiate students depend up to 2 hours. Shorter sessions for younger students. Breaks are so important with learning differences. So with the individual with an executive function or ADHD type difference, they're going to need short chunks of academic time spent so that they can get the most out of their work session, take a quick 5-minute break, and then get plugged back into another a round. We call them rounds, like a boxing round, like we're doing rounds when we're doing work. And then, the agenda is one of the most important pieces to someone with executive function difficulties, someone in early recovery, just to see what they're going to get out of the session with me. So on the computer, what I do is, make a plan, let them know what exactly is going to be coming their way, the time spent on each thing, and, just so there's a clarity for them to really understand. Next slide, please. Okay, so then COVID-19 came to town, and then everybody's world turned upside down. For me, working with these young people, schools were closing. Schools weren't sure as what they were going to do. Social distancing was going on. Recovery meetings were no longer going on in person. They were shut down, and they were all going online. There wasn't a real clarity right away as to what was going to happen with that. And then remote learning was the only alternative for to help these young people. So Um, you know, basically, since I was no longer able to meet with them in person, I had to get creative. Um, I didn't have like the physical clock timers that I use. I use a physical clock timer that's big where they can see exactly how much time they're using during their sessions. You know, whiteboards are great with these kids so they can see exactly what's going on, what's on the board, what they need to do. With some students, I have 3 whiteboards. I have a couple of little ones, one student with who's in recovery with a nonverbal learning disability. We use 3 whiteboards and we talk it through. Um, so everything needed to be virtual. So yeah, like I said, it was time to get creative. Next slide, please. Thank you. So Zoom, as funny as it might say, I'll humbly say that I didn't really know too much about Zoom before COVID-19. Zoom is like my best teaching tool now. Offers face-to-face simulation. We can do the screen sharing capability so that, I can share screens, I can share agendas now, so that virtually we can show exactly what's going to happen on a Word document during the session. This helps to reduce anxiety as well, having the Zoom online platform over just trying to teach academics or working with someone in early recovery over the phone. And it increases interaction, connection. It also increases efficiency because I'm able to see more students virtually because there's no driving time. So I can see students, for an hour and a half, 3 sessions in a row, whereas before, if I was seeing a kid up in like North Baltimore, Towson, coming down to Alexandria, that would be a whole day. So technology working to our advantage. Able to manage the student's academic workload. Workload is really important because kids need to know what's coming down the pike with regards to their academics, not just what's in front of them. We can track academic progress really easily. Also, I'm able to review grades, absences, all sorts of material with regards to with Blackboard, Parent View, and Rediker. Learning platforms that the schools offer. And I'm able to really stay on top of the work, and they're able to see their work too. So we're able to collaborate and work as a team so that I'm not coming down on them like I'm this automaton. I'm giving them a tough time with their academics, but we're partnered and working together. Next slide, please. So yeah, so the tools for like regular time and COVID-19, like I said before, this is basically a simple recipe. It's not easy, but it's simple. A good timer with a bell is, integral to face-to-face. It helps with time management. It's also helped, I worked with a student up in the Towson area a couple of years ago who had never been to high school somehow and wanted to get her GED. But she was in early recovery and she had school phobia. So she would shut down when she was asked to do work or, be questioned about stuff. So, I had to take this really compassionate and caring approach with her. But we also used, we used the clock to kind of build up her resilience and kind of put a little bit of pressure on her each time. And it turns out she was able to get through her history and English GED with me. So that was a big success. And that's partially because of using tools like the clock and the bell. Computers are obvious, right? We all need computers. They keep track of everything. Good for me for note taking with regards to my company, Recovery Care Partner, my platform. I'm able to go in and take detailed notes on every session with every student to see how it went. And I'll always have that in the database so I can see exactly what I need to research if I need to go back to things. And another one that was interesting that my student actually, it's funny, these kids are so smart with computers and so clever that it's funny because I'm not the most savvy, but we'll work together on it. And it helps to build the therapeutic alliance, but it also helps me to get, the education piece done because, Google Docs is an example. One of my students loves Google Docs and super helpful, remotely with paper writing. We can share a document, we can do an outline together. Not the same as, say, using a whiteboard or something like that, that would be, the most efficient, but we're able to do it and do the best we can with what we have, and really, combine these documents and get material completed. We do worksheets that way. We've written long papers that way. And yeah, it helps them to kind of really provide the structure that, a student with executive function difference or another learning difference might have a tough time with otherwise. So next slide, please. So these are just some of the results of my cases during COVID-19. So one of my students was in early recovery. He was up north. We were working remotely. He was in Pennsylvania, and he had achieved a 4.0 for the semester. This is a student with difficult time, nonverbal learning disability, but really kind of was able to help him, model and use all those tools that I just spoke about to really get him motivated to success. I had another high school student. It's strange. I've had a handful of students with nonverbal learning disabilities. And this student was in early recovery, came to me coming out of a wilderness program in Utah. He came to me for the semester, and we were able to earn all A's. He did great, and he attributed it to a number of different things when I asked him, speaking to him about it. One of the reasons that he thought it worked better was because of the online. The online helped him a little bit because it was slowed down and it wasn't as intensive and as intimidating in a classroom. He did say that my help with him definitely was effective and an integral part of his earning the grades. But he also thought a little bit that, to be candid, he thought it was a little easier about high school in this kind of virtual world. So just an interesting kind of aside. And then I had another freshman in high school. He did slightly better academically. I worked really hard with this kid. I was meeting with this kid 3 times a week for 2 hours at a time, on the phone with mom and dad all the time. He did better academically. He improved a little bit, but he was pretty oppositional. I was able to keep him on task and hold him accountable so that he passed and got his work done, but he was a difficult case. He was a difficult case. So 12-step integration, the next step, so to speak. Like I said before, there was no in-person recovery meetings due to the virus, and everybody in my recovery world was kind of freaking out, saying, where are we going to go? What are we going to do? And the meeting started coming up online as program takes care of itself. But it's scary for a young person to attend an in-person meeting and a virtual meeting. So one student was afraid to be seen on the screen in a meeting with like 100 or 50 people. He's afraid of being called on. This student was an 18-year-old. Insecurities about not knowing anyone, not having allies on the screen, and then uncertainty about what 12-step meetings are like. So basically I had to coach him through every single thing and help him with this. Next slide, please. So with the mentoring piece, this is another kind of aspect of mentoring. I'm able to kind of mentor and make sure these kids get linked up with online recovery and really get integrated with the 12-step world. With students I've offered to, and I've attended these meetings with them virtually so that I'm on the screen with them. I give them I lay it down, I explain the whole way that the meeting's going to work, what's going to be said, how things are going to happen at the beginning, so they're not scared away. I give them an out. Always give my kids an out. Like if they're not comfortable, if they want to back off, they can leave at any time. There's no lockdown. It's so important for these kids to have a getaway plan, I think. We build from the first meeting. We just keep focusing on going forward, and so just some feedback on these virtual meetings. Mixed results. I had an 18-year-old student who left. He got scared and he panicked, and he was afraid that he would be called on in front of 100 people, even though I kind of coached him and told him that he didn't have to answer. But he was developing more like a younger. He was developmentally more like a 15-year-old. He needed lots of scaffolding, and he still does need lots of scaffolding. He's not closed-minded to going back to meetings, but he needs some work. And then I had a 20-year-old college student that loved it. He just was all over the East Coast, going to meetings on the West Coast, asking me for more meetings. He's from the DC metro region, so asking for more meetings in the DC metro region, getting connected to a home group down here, building relationships with other guys in the meetings. And he was able to get a sponsor too. So next slide. So basically, ways that I can partner with you. I'm a collaborator. I'm compassionate, I'm genuine. I like to, build cohesion among therapists, treatment centers, you name it, psychiatrists, academic counselors, teachers. I am pretty much the eyes and the ears where, a psychiatrist or a therapist is in the office. I'm out there in the community, meeting with the young person, seeing things in the family, seeing things in the house, that, I can really convey important messaging to the clinical teams. I love to, offer that I'm willing to participate in clinical or academic meetings. I've done so in the past. I hope to do so in the future, and hope to work with your treatment team. And that's about it. So thank you.
Thanks, Eric. I was listening. So you're staying pretty busy during these times, yeah?
Yeah, I'm really busy.
What's going on? What are the dynamics right now with COVID-19 and the fact that you're seeing, increase in volume? Kind of what are the situations that are causing folks to reach out for help?
So reaching out for help because basically the kids are struggling academically, and they need the one-to-one. And what I'm able to do creatively is, like, I work in the back, on the back patio, in the back area, in the backyard, on the picnic table, where there's a wireless signal. And I'm able to kind of, with masks on, I'm able to kind of coach these kids and work with them in the house. So it's kind of a unique kind of position that I'm in, that I'm able to do that.
And Sarah is asking, saying many parents are anxious while anticipating a teen or young adult returning home after residential treatment. Do you encourage the parents to attend 12-step meetings for families and family support groups? She says her experience is that many need to be periodically reminded because they're too busy, etc. By attending a 12-step meeting, a parent learns a language that is similar to their child's.
I completely agree with that, Tom. I completely agree with, getting parents connected to parent groups, Al-Anon, other support groups if they need to be. And yeah, for sure.
But that's something that you're really, the services you provide, and we've worked together before, and you've worked with, and for a while, and you've worked with a number of our young adults here at Encore. So you're really engaging with the whole system where it's appropriate to do so.
Yeah.
So the young person, but also spending time with the families, with the parents, talking about what you're seeing, what's going on, and kind of guiding them through that process as well.
Right.
So those are the parents the ones that are usually reaching out to you for?
Yeah, for sure. Parents reach out to me, definitely, if they need support, if they need help. And, I like to help and work in families and work with the parents. But, what I ideally like to do is get the parents into like a clinical team meeting if it's at like an Encore place like that, so they can work with the team and the clinicians, or get them handed off to a family therapist.
And expound on that for me, because I know, and I know there's some private therapists and private practice clinicians that are watching now. So how do you button up with the clinical teams? Like, how does the care coordination work?
So normally if a client is referred to me from a treatment center, they're coming into town, usually if if I'm asked, usually the young person will have a therapist already lined up. If not, I will kind of help to select a therapist, and then also help the family to pick a family therapist as well, to kind of do the parent coaching as well, because you can't coach both the parents and the kids at the same time.
Gotcha. So you're keeping your relationship more with the kids and someone else providing more of the parent coaching.
Yes.
Okay. And is that something that you're providing through your team, or are you providing that through other practitioners in the region?
I mean, with the parent coaching, it depends on like certain circumstances. We'll bring in like an interventionist like Don Sloan into the mix to kind of have a conversation with the family, where he can kind of, be the quote unquote bad guy. Or else I, reach out to other family therapists in the community, and kind of ask them to kind of step in and help with the family coaching.
So really like truly, as you said, a collaborative way, whatever makes the most sense and whatever resources are at your disposal.
For sure, very, very, can be totally creative with regards to who I choose, or who we put together. Just whatever's best for the kid, because every case is different. And I also take the recommendations, obviously, from the treatment centers, direct recommendations from them. So if they make a recommendation, I listen to them.
Okay, so for programs and for clinicians that are on here, how do they identify, who might be good for you? What, kind of demographics, what areas? Well, I'll say it this way. I mean, there are a lot of folks that I think your services really, would appeal to, and a lot of practitioners that would benefit from having your support. So, when should they be looking to reach out? Kind of, what should they be looking for? Who are you best working with?
So I think, if there's a social worker or a psychologist that's working with any one of these young people that's struggling academically, or struggling with substance abuse, then I would love to have a conversation with them, and I'd love to discuss and kind of see how we could best collaborate, so that I can work with the young person out in the community while they're seeing the young person in the office.
Yeah. I wanted to ask too, like while you were talking, and I have some questions coming in as well. I was thinking, like, none of us have a crystal ball, right? We don't really know what the future is going to look like with the, COVID-19. And my wife's a elementary school teacher in Fairfax County, and it looks like they're doing some interesting stuff next year and trying to figure out what that looks like. But how are you preparing your students for the future? Do you have an opinion on students taking this upcoming year as a gap year due to the state of things? How are you advising?
I think it depends on the case. I have students that are, one of my students he's doing remote summer prep for his senior year of high school. And we're going at it 100%. We're doing work every week on just keeping him up to speed, so that he can, it's uncertain for sure. But I mean, if he needs to go back to online learning again, then I'll be there to support him. It's not, some of the students, the morale is a little bit low because kids are tired of, being at home and doing these stuff on the computer, and you're not being able to really be in a classroom with friends and kind of hang out and socialize as well. But it's kind of a tough spot, but it kind of depends on the kid.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing is, trying to keep up the momentum, and we're seeing that in a number of ways right now. It's, do you use this time to pause and focus on other things, or do you keep your foot on the gas and keep going forward with plans? I really liked what you were talking about with the upside to virtual learning, and that some folks are actually going to do better on that
Mm-hmm.
than they would do in an in-person setting. And working in the recovery field as we do, frankly, going away to college, or even being in high school, is a pretty high risk environment. So are you seeing that benefit on the recovery side too? I get, that folks are anxious and, want some more freedom, but do you see a benefit on the recovery side, or, how are your folks doing with staying clean?
They're doing pretty well. I mean, the kids they're attending the online meetings, many online meetings. I do get a lot of complaints that they're not the same. There's no face to face, heart to heart in person. But I just encourage them to, this is what we have right now, and we got to make the best out of what we're dealing with right now, and continue to kind of plug away and keep coming back and keep charging the road. So yeah.
With your folks you're working with, do you help them, with employment and things like that too, or are you strictly focused on the academic?
No, good question. I do. I definitely help with, vocational coaching. I help with, I've helped kids work simple resumes, getting jobs, high school age students getting summer jobs, different circumstances now because of what's going on. But I have a student right now that's applying to a Lowe's because Lowe's is hiring. And he's in early recovery and he's old enough to work there. So he's going in for an interview. So yeah, it's definitely there. If it's safe, I say go for it.
Yeah, because that's one of the questions that just came in is what advice are you giving kids who recently graduated but are understandably, having a hard time securing employment? So I mean, on that, this is something you're doing. How are you helping them? So you say resumes. Lowe's is actually a great option. Home Depot.
Yeah, I mean resumes, Home Depot, just sometimes lowering the bar a little bit, so like they're what they really want to be doing, and kind of taking what would be fulfilling and kind of maybe like a little bit less than their ideal, but just trying to have realistic expectations about work and about like what we can do, and if they need coaching with scheduling, like I help with. I forgot to mention that, like. If they have a work schedule and they can't remember their work schedule, I help with that too. I help with wake up, all that stuff that they need with regards to the work piece that wasn't really addressed in this, is something that I do too.
That's actually something I didn't know you did as much of. So that's super cool to hear. And you brought up something, we deal a lot in our family programming with the expectations of parents and where their young people, should be, or the expectations. How do you manage that in your role, right?
Good question. Well, that's kind of like what goes on in DC for me. Lots of parents that have really high expectations or high achieving parents with a young person who needs to just, get things started and put one foot in front of the other. And like what I do is I'm able to kind of de-escalate the success realm so that they don't need to go to Yale maybe just because mom and dad were PhDs from Yale or they're politicians or whatnot, but they can go to Nova. They could go to Encore, they could go to Nova and take some courses and build from that, and then do 2 years at Nova and then go on to another Virginia school, and do what they can and kind of have realistic expectations so that the pressure is taken off of them from the parents, so to speak, or even like parents don't necessarily always want to put pressure on them, but it's just kind of there in the family dynamic. So I can kind of help with that.
Yeah, we live and work in an environment that's, pretty type A, pretty, based on, your accomplishments. And I think here at Encore, with our young adults, we've seen a lot of that struggle, the friction between the success of the parents and the expectations of, of the young person. So, I know in working with you, as a team, it's really great to have you providing the hands-on academic support and helping someone continue to get one foot in front of the other and make progress, while the clinical side, or another one of your colleagues works with that family to help really be the filter, and be the ones to say, hey, they're doing great. Let them keep going. Let them define themselves, or continue on this path. I know there's not a question in there. We just see so much of the kind of self-esteem and shame that's associated with progress in academics or employment, and on a clinical side, something that we're dealing with that help with relapse prevention and creating a foundation and recovery. So I've always appreciated your support there.
Thanks.
Anything else? And we'll start kind of looking at wrapping up, but is there anything else you would say you're seeing during COVID-19 that's different, or, you know, new like presentations or things that we should all keep an eye on?
I mean, I think that one of the things during COVID-19 that's easy to, for some of these young people, it's easy to hide more. And it's easier for them to stay out of the radar. So it's important to be vigilant about where they're at, not necessarily like if, you know, where they're at as a person, but where their family's at and kind of how they're functioning, you know, and not hiding out or not trying to dodge calls or dodge Zoom calls or, you know, stuff like that. I think the accountability piece with, you know, the clinician, you know, whomever is involved in the team is really important.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of that as well. So thanks for that. Well, I'm not seeing additional questions coming in. Eric, I want to thank you for joining us, and I really, you know, thank you for the work you do. I know, like, especially, you know, all the time with the folks we serve, you know, it's an important service that you provide, but also with this pandemic, you know, the work you're doing is key in helping folks maintain trajectory and really, you know, navigate the rest of their life, things that affect them for the rest of their lives. So thank you for the work you do. We are gonna move on. So, you know, invite everyone, all the participants, to please join us next week, same day, same time, as we welcome, you know, Tara Handren from the Caron DC Regional Office to discuss virtual AA meetings, what they were like, what happened, and what they're like now. I think that'll be that's based on some research she did years ago, and, you know, some updated information. I'm really excited to hear what she has. The following week after that, we will host Dr. Robin Norris from Windward Optimal Health to address the topic financial therapy from the perspective of trauma in today's world. Frankly, a topic I've never heard, and I'm really excited to hear what Robin has to say about that. In the meantime, please reach out to myself, to Mallory Schwartzman, Maryland Addiction Recovery Center, Jess Ayer, who's with Caron Treatment Centers in Maryland, or James Flenkje, who's with Caron Treatment Centers in DC and Virginia. If you need anything, feel free to email us. We're always here to help and be a resource for you. Thanks again, everyone, for attending, and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Eric.